Welcome to Podkey Slopcast, where today's AI story is really about control. A lot of this week's news looks disconnected at first glance. Model interpretability, open weights, export blacklists, token budgets, solo founders. But the common thread is who gets to see inside the system, who gets to steer it, and who pays when that control slips. Anthropic's J-Lens claim is one of the more interesting interpretability stories in a while, because it's not just saying we visualize neurons or we found a funny circuit. The stronger claim is that there's a small reportable layer, J-space, that acts a bit like a global workspace, a compact set of concepts. The model is actively reasoning over, separate from the giant mess of background computation. If that holds up, it matters because it suggests at least some model reasoning is not fully opaque. There may be a narrow control surface where the model's poised to be spoken ideas become legible before they appear in the final answer. J-Lens is supposed to read that internal state as a short, human-readable list, including concepts the model never actually says out loud. That's the key distinction. We're not only auditing outputs, we're trying to inspect candidate thoughts upstream of output. The biggest practical result is Anthropic saying that training on those internal thoughts through counterfactual reflection improved honesty and integrity on real tasks. If true, that's more consequential than the neuroscience analogy. The pressure test is obvious, though. A readable internal summary is not the same thing as ground truth access to cognition. It could still be a partial interface, a compressed shadow, or a layer that becomes legible, mainly because the training process encourages it to be legible. The outside validation here is cautious, which is a good sign. Neuroscientists praised it as a mechanistic test of global workspace theory, but they also stressed the mismatch with humans. These models can juggle around 25 simultaneous concepts, humans maybe 3 or 4, and models don't have a persistent self or continuous thought stream. So the best supported reading is not, "we found machine consciousness." It's narrower and more useful. Anthropic may have identified a manipulable reasoning interface that improves some safety-relevant behavior. That's still a big deal. KPMG's analysis of 1.4 million workplace interactions points in a direction a lot of practitioners have felt anecdotally. The people getting the most value from AI are not the ones firing off one-shot prompts. They frame the problem, inspect the response, steer the model, iterate, and basically use it as a reasoning partner. Independent work from UT Austin lines up with that. The non-hype version is important here. This does not mean the model is a teammate in the human sense, or that every task benefits from extended back and forth. It means user skill matters, and the skill is teachable. That has second-order effects for companies. If capability depends partly on interaction habits rather than just model access, then the bottleneck shifts from procurement to training and workflow design. It also complicates broad productivity claims. A company can say it deployed AI everywhere and still get mediocre returns if employees are using it like a vending machine instead of a collaborator. NVIDIA's Nemotron hitting 100 million downloads looks like evidence that open-weight demand is real, especially where users want controllability, auditability, and self-hosting. Alex Karp's argument is straightforward. If you're a government agency or anyone handling sensitive workloads, proprietary APIs mean surrendering some control over weights, data custody, and possibly competitive advantage. That case is strongest in classified or battlefield contexts, where provenance and chain of custody are not nice-to-haves, they're the product. What muddies the picture is that open weights don't automatically solve deployment risk. You gain control, but you also inherit more responsibility for security, tuning, evaluation, and infrastructure. And infrastructure is where the market gets interesting. Semi-analysis reported delays to NVIDIA's Kyber NBL 144 servers because of a faulty midboard with possible knock-on effects to larger NBL 576 systems. If that's right, the practical consequence is not just a delayed product, it's a timing window for AMD and Google at the high end. At the same time, NVIDIA is trying to reduce financing friction through a neocloud backstop that guarantees revenue by renting unused GPU capacity and taking a cut. That's clever because it expands startup access without NVIDIA taking direct hardware default risk. SoftBank's separate plan to rent up to 10 gigawatts of US AI compute by 2028 pushes in the same direction. More compute as a service, more financing creativity, and maybe a slightly less bottlenecked market. So there are two opposing forces here. Supply delays can weaken NVIDIA's dominance at the top, while new financing and rental schemes can deepen its ecosystem anyway. Both can be true at once. The Defense Department expanding its blacklist to 188 firms is part procurement rule, part strategic signal. It raises the cost of any US relationship that could be framed as advancing Chinese military capability. Alibaba's lawsuit and temporary stay show the policy isn't frictionless. Even when the government has broad national security discretion, companies can still contest how these restrictions are applied. Then there's the mirror image distrust on the China side. Alibaba reportedly banned employee use of Anthropic's Claude after internal reviews flagged the model code as a high-risk backdoor. Anthropic disputed the data training concern and added mitigations. We don't have enough here to treat the backdoor claim as established fact. What we do have is a very clear indicator of geopolitical trust collapse. Foreign models are increasingly being evaluated not just on capability, but on national allegiance and hidden dependency risk. That same logic helps explain China's crackdown on anthropomorphic AI companions. The rules appear narrow rather than anti-AI across the board. Functional agents survive, emotionally oriented social personas get targeted. So the likely policy concern is less automation itself and more the social influence of systems designed to mimic relationships. At the governance layer, the UN Secretary-General calling autonomous weapons morally repugnant is norm setting, not enforcement. Still, getting all 193 member states into the same room matters, because the human-in-the-loop principle is becoming a baseline test of legitimacy. Illinois is more concrete. Its law defines catastrophic risk, requires fast incident reporting, and mandates independent audits starting in 2028. Support from Anthropic and OpenAI, with opposition from some larger tech firms, tells you something about incentives. Companies that already invest in safety processes may welcome rules that raise rivals' compliance costs. Opponents may genuinely worry about regulatory drag, but they also may prefer flexibility while the market is still moving fast. Meanwhile, Mercor reaching $2 billion in annualized revenue is a reminder that beneath all the frontier model glamour, a lot of the value stack is still human labor. If customers want proprietary fine-tuned systems, annotation and domain-specific data work remain core infrastructure. The labor story above that is surprisingly mixed rather than apocalyptic. Solo business formation is rising in AI-heavy sectors, solo founders are scaling revenue faster, and AI-native startups appear smaller and flatter. That supports a redistribution thesis better than an immediate mass layoff thesis. AI may first let workers peel away from firms and operate independently before it simply eliminates them. And finally, Tesla's token budgets show the boring management reality, catching up with the hype cycle. Once internal usage scales, somebody starts asking who burned thousands of dollars this week talking to a model. That sounds trivial, but it isn't. If inference and agent orchestration really are the next frontier, then cost control becomes part of product design. Faster inference, smarter orchestration, and disciplined usage policy may matter more to enterprise outcomes than another giant pre-training run. That's the thread running through all of it. Interpretability as control, open weights as control, budgets as control, policy as control. Thanks for listening to Podkey Slopcast. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.